Sainsbury, Director, Business Development, EMEA at Amazon Web Services.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, and for those of you that had to go through quite a feat to get here this morning, through the rain and other assorted transportation challenges, I want to start off by thanking you. I actually see a few thousand more of our friends outside that I hope we're going to be able to squeeze into the small spaces today. But I actually have the best job today, frankly, and that's to kick off this summit, to welcome you, and to try to set a bit of the stage of how I think you can make the most of the investment that we jointly have made. Now, when you think about the session today, we're actually going to have 12,000 or more of our closest friends with us in this facility. There's thousands more streaming, and for those of you that are wondering, that makes today the largest one-day summit on the planet for Amazon. And so I wanted to thank each of you for the really large commitment that you're making to come and spend an entire day with us. We don't take that lightly. Obviously, each of you are walking away from family, friends, and probably a few work commitments as well. And so what our commitment is back to you is to ensure that every moment of this day is providing value. Now, we're going to give you some raw materials, which we'll talk through in a moment, and you're going to be able to custom build that agenda that really works perfectly for you. But what's most important to myself and the broad set of partners and AWS team members here is at the end of the day, you leave tired, but you leave motivated, energized, and inspired to go do some amazing things. Now, the way we're going to make that happen is we've built 14 tracks. We have 60 sessions or more that range the gamut, as you can imagine, from deep technical insights to business and operational insights, focusing on security. And we've listened to your feedback and have added some sessions focused on Amazon's culture. So what have we done as a company to think about building teams, speeding decision-making? Some things that in the past you have actually said, hey, we'd actually like to hear from Amazon. And so I just want to make sure I call that out as well. Now, an additional point I want to make sure that you know is we typically don't do sales and marketing presentations very well. Many of you may know if you've attended our events. And so what you're not going to see today, and I hope you're not disappointed by this, is a whole lot of fluffy slides with future theoretical announcements that we may make. What we want to do is for you to walk away with hardcore insights of things that are happening today and insights gained from partners and customers who have real lessons. Now, you see the agenda in front of you. I'm going to have a very brief amount of time with you. We're going to have a really energizing and inspiring keynote, and then the rest of the day is up to you. I do want to make sure and call out that for those of you that are involved in a public sector agency or organization or are involved in that part of the UK business sector, then please do join Teresa Carlson as well, who is our worldwide vice president for public sector, directly following this keynote, and she's going to be hosting an event that many of you may be interested in attending as well. I can't go forward without thanking the sponsors who have actually made the day possible. And our global sponsors, which you can see here on the slide, are absolutely critical to the content, to the venue, to the ability for us to create the kind of value that we plan on providing you today. And so I want to make sure that, A, you know how appreciative I and the team are. I hope you are as well. And if you would, over the course of the day, make sure to go spend some time with each of those partners in the Expo Center and get an idea of who they are and the lessons they've learned and how they may be able to help you in your cloud journey as well. We also have our 3 platinum sponsors in New Relic, Cloudability, and Palo Alto Networks. Again, massive investments of time, money, and people to make the day possible, and I appreciate you going and thanking them and spending some time with them. We have a whole assortment of our gold sponsors that, as you can see, range the gamut from application service providers to resellers, managed services companies, and consulting firms. Similarly, with our silver sponsors, a whole array of global organizations who have a presence in the UK, as well as UK-based organizations that I'd encourage you to go see. And then obviously, last but not least, our bronze sponsors. All of these folks are located on the upper level, right outside those doors in the Expo Center. If you haven't been to the Expo Center, you have to go, not only to go see these partners and have a great opportunity to learn, but there's a great partner there actually serving fresh waffles, there's a number of gourmet coffee shops, and there's actually an escape room. So if that's not a pretty great Expo Center, in addition to meeting these sponsors, then I don't know what fun looks like in your mind, but that's actually going to be a pretty good afternoon for me. Now, as a company, we've been on an incredible journey with you as customers, and I wanted to show you this not to pound our chest, but to thank you and to show you the kind of momentum that we in the cloud are experiencing because of the level of trust that you've provided us. We've grown significantly. In fact, 41% when you compare against our Q4 quarter, bringing us to over $7 billion in that 90-day period, and us reaching almost $31 billion in annualized run rate. That makes us a big company, but actually, as many of you know, we're fond of saying that we're at the very early days. In fact, it's just day one for the internet, for the cloud, for Amazon, and in what we believe we have in terms of an opportunity with you. So one, thank you for the commitment and trust you've already provided us. And also, we truly believe that this is very, very early for all of us, and so it's super exciting times for us. We're fortunate to have a number of customers joining us, as I mentioned, here at the summit. As I told you, we're less interested in putting a bunch of Amazon people in front of you and talking at you. We'd much rather have customers and partners who have real-world experiences sharing those with you. And you're going to see a number of them here. Now, we have over 100,000 active customers in the UK alone at the moment, and they range from SMB organizations to hot startups, really big enterprises, and an assortment of public sector agencies and organizations. Now, what I want to do for a moment to set the stage for the day is actually look back into history in order to project the future. And so as we as a team were thinking about what are some of the key themes that we really want to make sure and use to frame the day and make the most of our opportunity with you, it was the fact that history kept telling us that some of the world's most dramatic inventions have come from the United Kingdom. And so as we think about some of those inventions, we actually went all the way back and looked at things like the cotton industry, which for the most part, in the late 1700s, was a cottage industry, producing about 40 million yards of cotton through the processing mechanisms of that day. And yet, because of innovations and inventions that occurred in the United Kingdom, a few things happened. One, that dramatically improved and increased from 40 million yards to 2 billion yards of processed cotton coming from this island, coming from the United Kingdom. And not only did that obviously positively impact the UK itself, it also created an entirely new business of exports, further positioning the UK as a powerful hub of innovation and commerce. Not to mention the inventions themselves that helped create this outcome were also exported around the world, with other countries realizing that the UK had something special and a DNA of invention that they wanted to exploit as well. If we go from cotton to steel, and you look at the same challenge, where the cost and time it took to process steel was significant until Sir Bessemer created the Bessemer processing system that dramatically reduced the processing time and the cost of delivering steel. Now, the result of that, as you can imagine, is significant because it allows us to do things like build railroads, which many people equate the railroad to a bit of a metaphoric World Wide Web, if you will, the ability for communities and people to connect like they had never been able to before. It allowed us to think differently about things like the automobile industry. So while the process itself created yet another industrial opportunity for the UK, the invention of processing steel positioned the UK as a place of invention. Now, what I also didn't know in my history lesson preparing for the time with you today is that the Savoy Theatre, not far from here, is the world's very first public building that was lit by electric light. So 1,200 incandescent light bulbs were installed in that building, and it was the very first time in the world that a public entity, a public building, was able to benefit from that lighting. And again, the world noticed. So not only did the lights go on in the Savoy Theatre, the lights went on globally as the UK said, we're actually going to embrace and harness this technology. And so again, the ability to invent is something that has always been inherent to the UK. Now, as we turn and we think about the digital revolution, the UK, as many of you know, had a dramatic impact and involvement. And this is just a few examples, as you see on the slides. The ones that really struck me, though, were Colossus. And many of you may know that a postal worker here in the UK that actually lived not far from the room that we're in right now actually joined the UK military and designed and built the world's first electronically programmable computer that was used to break codes during the war. Now, obviously, there's been many books written about Colossus, and the estimates of the thousands and thousands of lives that were saved and the dramatic reduction in the negative impact of the war, all because of this gentleman seeing a problem, seeing technology, and being motivated to stitch those things together and invent. When we think of the World Wide Web, obviously coming for the most part from thinkers in the UK, home networks, 5G, mobile phones, these are all things that without leaders and invention and motivation in the UK, the world would not be benefiting. And so we're excited about the fact that the UK continues to be that hotbed of innovation. The important thing that we want to make sure and relay to you today, and for you to really embrace as you spend time with us, is none of this is possible without you here in the room. This is not the kind of invention, this is not the kind of revolution that comes from a company like AWS alone. It comes from all of us realizing that there's dramatic opportunity, there's problems to solve, and it's us working together to speed the invention and speed the ability for us to create new and interesting solutions. Now, recently, the London School of Economics has released a study, and I wanted to share a few important statistics with you, because I think it really does, again, highlight the importance of the digital revolution and the power of cloud computing. Their study shows that 95% of the startups in the UK would not be in existence without cloud computing. 95%. So if you think about many of you here in the room, who work for some of those companies, if you think of the Monzo Banks, the Deliveroos, some of the brand new startups that some of you may be founding this very week, we believe that the cloud and the ability to move quickly, to be able to have utility-based computing that's on demand, that these sorts of opportunities reduce the barriers of entry for startups. And the London School of Economics study validates that point. They also talk about a number of very significant productivity gains that have occurred from the cloud as well, and you can see a few of them here. So not only has general productivity increased and improved with the use of the cloud, the ability for developers to do things that are miraculously more powerful, do them faster at a higher level of productivity, is something that, in our opinion, and in the opinion of the London School of Economics, has been enabled through the power of the cloud. Now, when you think of the history lesson that we just went through and some of the great examples that we talked about as well, there's one common thread, one commonality throughout all of those, and that is people. In each of those cases, there were skilled and motivated people who were identifying an opportunity or seeing a problem and acting, taking action to develop a solution. Now, we have heard from you that skilled and motivated people that know AWS and know the technology stack well can be hard to come by. And so many of you may be familiar that about a year ago, we launched a program in partnership with companies like KPMG, the Ministry of Defense, and the Prince's Trust to not only go find and attract tomorrow's workforce, but also to build tomorrow's workforce. And so we launched this program, the AWS Restart program, that allowed us to go attract people who maybe typically didn't have the deep technical skills. Say someone returning from military service and his or her partner, and us working with partners around the UK to create training and development and certification opportunities, and then actually helping place those people into jobs with many of your companies here in the room. So we're going to continue to make those kinds of investments because we hear you loud and clear that it's great to be motivated and inspired, but we need the talented people to help us to deliver on these solutions, and we want to be a partner with you in that. Now, what's most exciting for me is an announcement that I have the opportunity to make today, and that is the AWS Get IT program. So while we absolutely believe that it takes skilled and motivated people to develop new solutions and solve problems, we also are completely convicted that we need diverse, skilled, and motivated people. And the way that we're going to do that is not just attract those people from all around the world. We're going to go build this workforce. And the way that we're doing that is capitalizing on a program that we've already piloted, in fact, in the UK, that's focused on inspiring, training, and developing Year 8 young ladies in UK schools to come and consider technology jobs. We're doing that by actually forming partnerships with schools, providing some AWS specialists from the business and technology to come spend time with these groups of young people to help them understand the opportunity that they have ahead. And what's especially exciting, in my opinion, is the fact that you get to meet many of them. I worked hard, as Sonia knows, to get many of these young ladies in the room, but unfortunately we couldn't get them in here, and yet there's a few hundred of these young women here at this event today Some of them may have resumes, so I wanted to let you know if you want to do some early recruiting. But they're here to actually learn. They're here to meet you as well. And most importantly, as you can see, at a little bit after 3 o'clock in Theater 7, we're going to complete the competition of selecting the team that has built the most impressive, exciting application using AWS services. And not only are we going to celebrate that group of people, we're also going to deploy and maintain that application for the team as well. So I'm really excited about this program. I hope you will be as well. And please, please take the opportunity today to go and meet many of these young women. They're doing miraculous things. So with that, I now have the opportunity to introduce our keynote speaker. I want to again thank every single one of you for taking the time to come and spend an entire day with us. This day is up to you. We've given you some raw materials, but help us make sure that you get the most from this day by giving us feedback and asking anyone with an AWS badge on of how we can help. But without further ado, let me welcome someone on the stage that actually has been with this company and seen the evolution actually from the very beginning for 13 years. So please join me in welcoming Matt Garman to the stage, VP of our Compute Service Platform. Thank you.
Good morning, London. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'll do a quick introduction, and then we'll get started in the material. As Darren was kindly mentioned, I've been at Amazon a long time. It's been Amazon and AWS for about 13 years now. And really, it feels like we're just getting started. Sometimes people will actually ask me why I've been with AWS for so long and why I've stuck with it. And really, there's two reasons. The first is the opportunity to work with a huge number of smart, passionate people. And really, kind of most importantly, I get the opportunity to build some amazing, incredible services for customers like you and delight customers with what we get to go build. Now, building amazing products is actually what really gets me the most excited. And AWS is an incredible place to be if that's what you like to do. I bet this room is actually full of builders who are excited about building products for your customers, and it's why you're here today. I'm excited to help you learn how AWS can help you make better products for your customers on AWS. But first, I want to take a little trip down memory lane. A couple of these are some of the highlights of the first headlines that came out when we first launched AWS back in 2006. And one of the things that we learned quickly is that for builders, having the right tool for the job is critical. It makes it easier, faster, and more cost-effective to build the right thing. Now, I actually started out my career at Amazon as the very first product manager for AWS. And one of the things that I got to do is work very closely with some of our earliest customers to really understand what we could do to make it easier for them to build applications. Now, when we talked to customers and learned about the vast set of tools they needed, we of course learned they need compute, they needed storage, they needed networking, they needed databases, all of those things that we knew that they would need. But once we got past those basics, we started to learn that there was a lot more options that people needed. They needed that deep level of functionality so that they could build faster, so that they could lower their costs, and then they could deliver more. It turns out that having it all really does matter. This morning, I'm excited to spend a little bit of time with you walking through how the depth and breadth of AWS platform has really grown and evolved over the past 13 years, and to show how the breadth of functionality that AWS has can help you achieve what you need to do. Now today, over the past 13 years, AWS has built a robust, diverse set of services. We have over 165 services. We have core infrastructure building blocks, like compute and storage, but we also have databases, both SQL and NoSQL. We have analytics services, IoT services, machine learning services, a whole depth of functionality. Now, it turns out that lots of providers claim to be able to check the boxes that say they offer these technology areas as well. But when you look at how much the depth and breadth of functionality happens in each of these different areas, you'll find out that those things aren't the same. And what you really need is the most capable, most rich set of services in order to build the right applications for your business. Now, it doesn't take long once you really start diving into the services to understand the differences of those, and we're going to highlight some of those for you today. Let's do a couple examples. The first one is our AWS Global Infrastructure. Now, a map like this makes it easy to see. We have 21 regions spread all across the world. Now, and we have 4 more announced. coming soon in Bahrain, Cape Town, Milan, and Jakarta. Now, each of these regions is composed of what we call an availability zone. An availability zone is an isolated set of infrastructure, has its own power, its own networking, its own fault tolerance, and in every single region we have at least 3 availability zones. These isolated sets of infrastructure and availability zones make it easy for you to build highly available applications. We currently have 64 public availability zones all across the world. This makes it easy for you to achieve low latency for your applications, but also for you to comply with any sort of data locality or residency requirements that you might have. This is a unique feature to AWS. Now let's look at databases. It's becoming more and more important for you to be able to pick the right database for your application. Recognizing this, AWS has 14 different database services, double what any other cloud provider has. And sometimes your needs might change over time. So we have a database migration service that makes it easy to migrate data from one of the databases to other options for your different applications. Let's look at storage. Now, when we think of storage, there's a bunch of different types of storage. There's block storage, object storage, or file storage. But there's a lot more involved in each of those. When we think about block storage, AWS has more volume options than everyone, and it's the only one that allows you to resize your volume on the fly as the needs of your applications change without any downtime. With object storage, what customers really want is the absolute best in security, availability, scalability, and to be able to control at an individual object level controls so that they know the right people are accessing their data. Finally, we also have file systems. We have a range of file system options, including a cloud-native file system, a Windows file system designed for your legacy and Windows applications, as well as a high-throughput scalable file system custom designed for HPC-level applications. Finally, when it comes to data transfer, you need to figure out how you get your data into the cloud. And AWS has 11 different services that help you get data into the cloud, more than any other offering. And finally, we get to security. At AWS, we know that security is absolutely priority 1 for you and your application, and we take the trust and security of your application data very, very seriously. AWS offers more than 200 security, compliance, and government services and key features, vastly more than any other provider. Look at something like encryption, which is incredibly important as you look to protect your data. All AWS services that store customer data give you the ability to encrypt your own data. And if you want to have control over the keys to that data, you can use the AWS Key Management Service and control your own keys. This is over 116 services in AWS that support encryption. That's 3x more than any other cloud provider. Now today, I'm going to go into more depth and breadth of these AWS capabilities and show you that this is how customers of all types are extending their existing workloads into the cloud and unleashing their builders to build new applications that they never thought were possible. One such customer, like Sainsburys, that was founded 150 years ago, based right here in London. They're here to tell you about how their cloud-first strategy is helping them transform their business to better serve the needs of their customers. Coming onto the stage is Phil Jordan and Chloe Moriarty to tell you a little bit more. Please welcome them.
Well, good morning. Hopefully, Sainsburys is well known to you. You may not know that we celebrate our 150th anniversary this year in a few weeks' time. We were disappointed not to be part of Darren's history lesson earlier, but as a business that's been around through many of those transformations, I think what we'd like to do today is just share a little bit about what Sainsbury's looks like today, and particularly our digital transformation. A business 150 years old can only survive with partnerships. And we've got two partnerships we really want to focus on. Firstly, the partnership that I have with Chloe. Chloe is the Chief Digital Officer in Sainsbury's. We both sit in the operating board, and we basically are very close conspirators on how we drive digital transformation in our business. And the responsibility splits broadly. What and why we do digitally is very much Chloe's vision, and then how and when we enable that is very much my job. So without further ado, let me pass to Chloe to talk about the first bit of our story we'd like to share with you today.
Thanks a million, Phil. Good morning. So wow, has our landscape changed over the last 150 years. We started with 2 lovers. We've now got 195,000 colleagues. From 1 store to over 2,500 shopfronts nationwide. And from one single physical over-the-counter proposition, we now are online, offline, self-service, hands-on, whenever, wherever. And as the world moves on, and particularly our digital ambition moves on, we are really reliant on very strong internal partnerships and very strong select external partnerships. So as Phil mentioned, the technology and digital teams have a symbiotic relationship. Without Phil and his function, I might as well pack my bags and head home because we'd be nowhere. Our teams are fully integrated, aligned as much as possible around outcomes, and co-located. And boy, was that necessary. So as recently as, and this is airing dirty laundry, as recently as 2 years ago, when you entered our website as a customer, you had a different experience depending on which interface you were using. Some of the pages that you touched on were operating at double the load speed time as they are today, and our uptime, if you believe the trade press, which on this occasion you should, was not where it needed to be. Couple that with a world where our competitors were innovating and releasing fast, challengers were fast in front, and we had digital product queuing up behind 5 to 6 release cycles a year. It was not a happy place for anyone. So hence, cue the cavalry.
So this is the second part of our partnership story. Obviously, our partnership with AWS goes back beyond our groceries online migration, but really, I guess our cloud-first strategy and our relationship with AWS really kicked off at the point we decided to answer the questions that Chloe had, was to take our groceries online business and rebuild it in the cloud. And this was effectively taking a WebSphere e-commerce monolith with an Oracle RAC rack database and moving it, modularizing it, and putting it into AWS. That movement of rack to RDS and that big database migration was all done using AWS services, and now we have a fully fledged cloud native-ish service that runs groceries online across all our business today. We make huge use of, as you'd imagine, the compute services, and today we run about 80% of our groceries online with EC2, and 20% is serverless. So we also use other security services. The outcome of that migration has been significantly transformational for our business. 30% less infrastructure. We routinely now see transactions on the website and batch processing 70 or 80% quicker and more performant than it was before. That migration was a 7 terabyte migration to this date, and touch wood, we've had no major outages. As Chloe said earlier, the release cycle has gone from 5 or 6 releases to multiple daily releases. And inside that migration, there were a number of world firsts. We were taking Oracle products and moving them to the cloud on AWS for the first time. So we're rightly proud of both the project and the impact. And again, a partnership between us, AWS, and other businesses like Demon Consulting were heavily involved. So that's one aspect of our transformation. Let's talk about Nectar and data next.
Sure thing. Can you tell why he's my hero, right? So when we were talking about Nectar, 70% of our customers engage with Nectar. Now, Nectar is predominantly an analog card-based loyalty scheme. And it as an entity wasn't part of our family. And we as Sainsbury's wanted to shift the way we thought about loyalty, reward, and engagement. Becoming more digital first, centering around a decision engine, which is around the next best customer message, as opposed to the next best commercial message. And empowering our customers to then decide which offers they wanted, at what part of the journey, and how they wanted to use them. There is a very long story for this, but the short version is Nectar and Sainsburys are now one. And as we joined forces, we released a trial in the Isle of Wight coming up a year ago now, and then have scaled that slowly through Wales. And what we are seeing with that engagement, which is, as we say, digital first, engine-based, and really interactive, is engagement, weekly engagement, has improved 5-fold, even in that short space of time. So the job at hand is to dev release, and to get some amazing functionality out nationwide over the coming months. And once we've done that, the scope of reach for us and our Nectar partners just builds from there.
So this touches on the second part of the digital transformation we were talking about, and it's really more a data transformation. We've been on a journey for some time now, 4 years, give or take, around applied data science and machine learning. We've assembled the right resources, we've hired great people. Our chief data scientist, Ender, is in the room today. So it's a long journey. We've been working very hard at creating that single customer view. Nectar really helps us with that. We believe now we have a pretty unique data set for the UK in terms of what we understand about our customers. And we've had to go about rebuilding our whole data ecosystem to do that. AWS and serverless has been absolutely key to our ability really to move on and productionize algorithms and drive machine learning. Prior to us using AWS and serverless technologies, we were really struggling to get traditional IT methods to support us in what we needed. And I'm pleased to say now, both in terms of Nectar and thinking around customer data and preference, but also in many other areas of our business, we're now starting to see real tangible transformation through the application of data science. Things like our ability to replenish shop, so we bring a roller of goods into the back of a store, and we will break that store nowadays based on an algorithm that tells the colleague where's the best place in the store to take that stock based on a store-specific planogram. Right the way through to our ability now to schedule in closed business, groceries online, vans. Hopefully you all do your online shopping with Sainsburys. When that van is scheduled to go to all the deliveries, again, that's been taken away from a manual Excel-driven process into a machine learning or an adaptive piece of data science that helps us schedule those vans really effectively. And we're now moving on through a whole culture and capability initiative in our whole business to really recognize that data really is our core differentiator. And I said earlier, partnerships around with people like AWS is absolutely central to our ability to do that. Okay, bringing it together.
Bring it all home. So we started 150 years ago with a single proposition and a single format. And in the future, we will look to bring together our multiple brands and propositions. And as we know our customers better than anyone else, we will aim to utilize Nectar and our identity platforms to do so. We will enable amazing cross-group shopping experiences by understanding, anticipating, and then delivering the intent and the mission of our customers. And finally, we at Sainsburys aspire to be the most trusted retailer where people love to work and shop. So we will look to be increasingly always on, catering for the widest of missions to enable our customers to live well for less. And that can be less cost, less time, or in today's world, even more importantly, less stress.
Thank you. So to wrap it up, I guess we were very keen to be here today to describe our partnership, which we're really proud of. So I think hopefully share something about a 150-year-old retail business that you might be surprised about. But also we wanted to acknowledge the fact that we have a great partnership with AWS. AWS has become a hugely important data center provider for me. But also, when I look at the services and I hear Matt talking about the number of services, we broadly use about 81, 82 services today from AWS. So as builders, and we're increasingly builders, we find access to these services is central to our ability to drive transformation. With that, we'd like to thank you, I think. Nothing else to say. And hopefully, we'll see you in the Sainsbury's stores soon. Thank you.
Thanks a million.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Thank you. Okay. It's awesome to see how a traditional company like Sainsbury's is really modernizing and using AWS to accelerate and deliver interesting and new value to their customers. Really fun to see. Thank you guys both. That was great. Now, almost always when we talk to companies, much like the company much like Sainsbury's we just heard from, Customers are choosing AWS to gain the agility and speed that they get from moving to the cloud. And that's why we're seeing customers of all sizes migrating to AWS. Now, one of the things that we've learned, as I've talked to many of the customers and many of the world's biggest customers in their migration journey, is that moving their legacy apps to the cloud, there's no one-size-fits-all. There's no magic easy button that moves legacy apps. However, if you want to move as fast as possible to the cloud, you're going to need the broadest and deepest set of tools to help you migrate. One of the things that customers first look to migrate when they move to AWS is they look at their data. What we've built is the broadest set of tools to help you move your data into the AWS cloud. I'll highlight a couple of those. The first is AWS Snowball. Snowball is a device that ships to your data center and allows you to actually physically put your data into this Snowball device, ship it back to Amazon, and we upload it to the cloud. This transferring of the data is simple, fast, it's secure, and it can often be up to a fifth cheaper than using the internet to transfer your data. But now let's say you have a huge amount of data. For that, we have what we call Snowmobile. This is effectively a snowball, but the size of a truck. A Snowmobile is an exabyte-size data migration capability that it's a secure data truck, can store up to 100 petabytes of data. You pull it up to your data center, quickly upload the data, and then we move it into the AWS cloud. There's no faster way to get your data into the cloud than that. And finally, AWS Data Sync. It's a data transfer service that automates the transferring of data and synchronizing the data over the internet, and it can often happen 10 times faster than many of the traditional open source tools that many customers often use. Now, just like you need to migrate your data to the cloud, one of the fundamental building blocks of any application is a database. And we make it really easy to migrate full databases as well with our database migration service. This is an important work to note that this migration service actually works both ways, allowing you to migrate databases both into and out of the cloud if you ever need to. Customers of all sizes are leveraging this service to migrate. And to date, we have migrated more than 130,000 databases into AWS using the database migration service. Pretty awesome. In fact, this number used to be 120,000 when I first looked at this deck a couple of weeks ago, and it's been updated. We're migrating so many databases so quickly. Now, when you think about application migration, there's a bunch of applications that you could move, but many of the traditional applications are what people often think of first. SAP and AWS have collaborated since 2011 to support AWS and SAP applications running in AWS. We support deployments of applications, of SAP applications for platforms, as well as HANA databases. However, if you're not able to migrate or manage your own SAP implementation, we also have a rich set of partners that can help you with that migration. Now, you also see that we have Windows up here. Many of you may be surprised to learn how many Windows workloads are running in AWS. Now, if I think back to 2008, it was when we first launched our first EC2 instance support for Windows. Now, the Windows ecosystem has come a long way since then, and today we have the richest set of Windows-supported services, including Windows, SQL Server, Active Directory, and more. According to a recent report by IDC, AWS actually hosts more than twice as many Windows workloads as Microsoft does. Pretty awesome. And that experience, running Windows, has earned our customers' trust, along with that broad set of capabilities. The number of AWS enterprise customers running on Windows on EC2 is also scaling rapidly. Our Windows EC2 usage has grown 400% over the past 3 years. We have hundreds of thousands of customers bringing their Windows workloads to AWS, including Autodesk, who's been running Windows in AWS for more than 10 years, and Salesforce, who actually runs more than 10,000 Windows instances on top of EC2. Now, many of you might be asking, what about hybrid? Well, we believe the vast majority of customers will eventually migrate all into the cloud. We realize that that's a journey, and that for a very long time, many of you will be running workloads in your data center and workloads in AWS. In fact, if you're not a customer that was kind of born in the cloud, you almost for sure have applications in both locations. And we have capabilities in hybrid that make it easier to do that. We see our role in hybrid as working with you to allow you to seamlessly operate that environment so that you can seamlessly migrate between your own data center and in the cloud and operate in both environments. We've developed the industry's broadest set of hybrid capabilities in storage, networking, security, application deployment, management tools. We want to make it really easy for you to integrate the cloud with your existing data center and your existing applications. A couple of examples. AWS Direct Connect makes it easy to connect your existing on-premise data center directly with the AWS cloud so you can transfer data back and forth all over private networking. AWS Outposts, which is currently in private preview, brings native AWS services and infrastructure and operating models directly to your own data center, where you can actually install AWS hardware into your own data center, co-location space, or your on-premise facility. Outposts allow you to run compute, storage, databases that you might need locally for certain low-latency applications, all natively, but using all the native set of AWS tools and capabilities. And finally, we have VMware Cloud on AWS. This allows customers to use the same software that they've been using on-premise for years, but run it on the AWS platform. Now, if we look at VMware and AWS, we've actually worked incredibly closely with VMware to build a very unique partnership here. This is the only managed cloud service directly operated and supported by VMware. AWS and VMware have collaborated closely to integrate their networking, storage layers, and we continue to add features that tie these services together, including a VMware variant of Outposts that's going to be coming out later this year. With VMware and AWS, customers can use the same set of tools that they've become accustomed to. vSphere, you can vMotion, you can actually vMotion workloads from on-premise directly into the cloud without any downtime. You can use those same sets of applications and permissioning tools that you're used to running on-premise, but in an entirely managed world where you don't have to worry about patching, you don't have to worry about upgrades, everything is managed for you. These customer applications can then be extended to the cloud, and because they're running in AWS, you have native application to your native AWS services, where you have low latency, high throughput applications between your traditional VMware applications and your AWS workloads. Stagecoach Group is a transport group that operates buses, trains, trams, and express coaches in the United Kingdom. Stagecoach migrated its revenue reconciliation system to VMware Cloud on AWS in just 3 weeks. This is half of the time that it would have taken them simply to procure and install new hardware in their own data center. With so many customers migrating to their platform or operating in a hybrid world, these customers are all using AWS's breadth and depth of services to run their existing applications. But what about customers who've built their applications on AWS from day one and are going through digital transformations and building completely new applications and inventing new customer experiences? We talked about migrating apps, but more and more customers are actually building new applications with microservices versus the traditional big monolithic architectures that are common to many of your legacy applications that customers are running today. Now, what do we mean by monolithic applications? That sounds like a huge, giant thing. And it is. With monolithic architectures, all of your processes are tightly coupled together in one big architecture, running as one big single service. Now, generally this is okay, but there's a couple of problems with this approach, particularly as you start to scale and get bigger. When you have one big application, it limits experimentation and makes it really difficult to implement new ideas, because particularly as you scale and everyone starts operating on the same code base, you end up stepping on each other and running into each other. Ultimately, this slows down development and leads leads to a slowing of innovation. This actually also adds risk to availability, because having a large number of dependent, tightly coupled processes means that there's a higher risk of your entire application experiencing problems. It also leads to an economic problem. Imagine if one small part of your application recognizes an increase in usage and needs to scale. With monolithic architectures, you have to scale the entire service just for that one little part. So what's the solution there? With a microservices architecture, your application is built as a large number of independent services. Each of these components runs an application process as its own independent service. That way, all of your developers can iterate on the microservices and deliver at whichever pace they choose that is right for their particular part of the application. At Amazon, we made this change about 15 years ago, where we broke apart all pieces of the Amazon.com service into its own services. We discovered that by factoring all of those services of our software into smaller services, we could move much more quickly, scale more rapidly, and keep up with the pace that our customers demanded. Because microservices run independently, each service can be updated, deployed, and scaled to meet the demands for its specific function. And each of your individual teams, most importantly, can make decisions on their own and more rapidly because it only impacts their little service that they're running. So, as we look at this move from monolithic services to microservices, let's start with compute and see how that impacts it. Now, compute has been changing over time. We started with virtual machines, and then over time, containers have started to become more and more popular. Then, we saw the rise of Lambda and event-driven computing. Today, when we see customers building applications, we find them combining all of these different types of compute into building their applications. So, when I launched the first instance for AWS, I thought back and looked at this. The first instance had one vCPU, it had 1.7 gigabytes of RAM, and a 250 megabit network connection. Today, on AWS, you can get a single instance that has 12 terabytes of RAM and 100 gigabits of networking. That's a 10,000 time increase in the size of the instance from the first one that we launched 13 years ago. Pretty cool. And later this year, we're going to be doubling that again to have an instance that has 24 terabytes of RAM. AWS offers by far the broadest and deepest offering of compute platform in the world. We have over 190 different instance options to match pretty much any workload. We have general purpose instances, we have instances targeted just for HPC, we have GPU instances optimized for machine learning. In fact, we have instances across many different architectures as well. For x86 instances, or for x86 architectures, we support Intel and AMD, and earlier last year, we launched our first ARM-based Amazon-produced chip, the Graviton processor, that allows customers to save up to 45% for many of their scale-out workloads. And today, I'm pleased to announce the newest addition to our instance family, the EC2 i3-EN. Today, I'm announcing the general availability of i3-EN. It's available. You can go check it out today. Now, before today, i3 was our first NVMe-based instance storage platform. And it's the go-to platform for most of our customers that are doing high I/O applications that need great random I/O performance. Now, based on customer feedback, a lot of customers said, we love the platform, but we need more storage on there, and we need cheaper storage. i3-EN is designed to meet that use case. Designed for I/O-intensive applications and workloads such as high-performance relational databases, NoSQL databases, and distributed file systems, data warehouses, i3-EN instances deliver the highest instance storage in the public cloud, and it lowers the price per gigabyte by 50% over current solutions. The largest i3-EN instance offers 60 terabytes of high-speed NVMe SSD storage. It has 96 virtual CPUs and 768 gigabytes of on-storage memory. It also leverages our custom Nitro card, delivering 100 gigabits of network capability. For high-performance workloads that require high storage density, almost 4x the storage that's available on i3 today, and at lower prices, again, 50% cheaper per gigabyte than i3 instances today, we're launching the i3-EN. I encourage you guys to go check it out. All right, now let's get into containers. First, let's look at the Elastic Container Service. ECS is a highly scalable, high-performance container management offering. It supports Docker containers and allows customers to easily run applications on a managed cluster of EC2 instances. Now, with ECS, you don't actually have to worry about your cluster management system. You don't have to deal with container automation or orchestration software or how to set any of that up. Everything is managed for you. It's designed from the ground up to work with AWS, so it's integrated with our whole suite of AWS services. Now, with Fargate, we've taken this even one step further. AWS Fargate is a serverless compute engine for Amazon ECS that completely removes the need for you to at all manage servers or clusters. With Fargate, you can focus only on the needs of your application and completely ignore ever having to think about infrastructure. You pay only for what you use, not on the overall size of your cluster. This allows you to spend more time building the application and less money on delivering it. AWS Fargate runs tens of millions of containers for customers every week and is growing incredibly rapidly. Last year, we launched Amazon EKS, which is a managed secure service to run Kubernetes. but without any of the hassles of having to build, manage, or update the Kubernetes control planes. Show of hands of anyone who loves running a Kubernetes control plane out there. No? Okay. Amazon EKS is the best place to run Kubernetes in the cloud. But we're not doing this alone. We contribute back to the Kubernetes community, working with our partners to make it easier to run Kubernetes in the cloud and easier to integrate with our suite of AWS services. Any major changes that we make to Amazon EKS immediately get upstreamed into the general EKS system. Now, there are tons of customers building with containers in production. Babylon uses technology and medical expertise to deliver 24/7 digital access to digital health tools. They use Amazon EKS to manage hundreds of Docker containers behind their AI research platform. With Kubernetes, when they used to manage it on-premise, it used to take hours to get a highly available Kubernetes cluster up and running. Using Amazon EKS, they can now get one running in less than 10 minutes. McDonald's is the world's largest restaurant company. They launched a home delivery program recently in only 4 months using microservices running on ECS. Their cloud-native microservices architecture allows the platform to scale up to 20,000 orders per second with less than 100 milliseconds of latency. That is a lot of hamburgers. Now, when you think about building a container application, there are several important components to an architecture that you need to think about. The first, you have orchestration, and for that we talked about you have ECS, you have EKS. Those handle the orchestration layer. Then you also have to have a compute platform. If you want to run serverless, you can use AWS Fargate, or if you want to have more control over the instances in your compute platform, you can run directly on EC2 instances. And finally, you need a registry service or somewhere to store your Docker images. And for that, we have Amazon ECR, where you can store container images. Now really, registry services need to stay out of the way, but they need to scale, they need to fit your continuous deployment system, they have to make it easy for you to manage security and scale with the needs of your application. Amazon ECR does that. Now finally, let's look at event-driven serverless computing, which we pioneered with Lambda. Lambda lets you run code without provisioning or managing any servers. You can run code for virtually any type of application or backend with literally zero infrastructure or administration and instantly achieve high availability. But to build truly serverless applications, you need more than just Lambda. You need support for serverless computing in the broad range of services that you're using. To that support, Lambda is integrated deeply with 47 AWS different services, which is several times more than any other cloud provider. Now, if you look at the list of services that Lambda supports and integrates deeply with, you'll see monitoring, you'll see logging, you'll notice identity, you'll see communications, but it's not just functions. It's not just managed services. You have to have that entire serverless application platform. Because Lambda lets you run without provisioning or managing servers, and it integrates seamlessly into so many different AWS services, it's become the central hub for all event-driven processing. This breadth and depth of the AWS platform is what allows you to have zero focus on your infrastructure. Serverless, in particular, lets you focus on things that bring value to your customers, not on infrastructure and IT management. And this shift to microservices, which allows you to move much faster. But honestly, there is one thing about monolithic architectures that's easier to understand. If something goes wrong, you know exactly where that problem lies. In a typical company, you're going to have a variety of applications and microservices. Some of them are running in Java, some might be running in .NET, some might be running in instances, some might be running in serverless. And you want to know, between all of those different services, how do you manage between all of them? How do they communicate with each other? When you move from physical networks to virtual networks, builders need an application-aware network. And you need application modules so that these things can easily find each other. You need a consistent communication management, you need complete visibility, and you need fine-grained controls for deployment. This is why we created AWS App Mesh. With App Mesh, you can simply define the rules on how your different microservices communicate with each other, and everything else for you is handled automatically. You can use App Mesh as a single point of control for communication between all of your services. You get observability between all of the services and all of the network flows, so you can easily pinpoint exactly what's going wrong. And you get granular traffic control that allows you to reroute around when somewhere in your application is having problems. App Mesh lets you focus on the application rather than the underlying details of the infrastructure that's powering the application. Serverless is happening everywhere, and it's happening at scale. Comic Relief's mission is to create a world that's free from poverty, and over the past 35 years, they've raised 1.2 billion pounds. The company uses AWS Lambda as its core donation platform, and it processes 300 donations a second. By switching to serverless model based on AWS Lambda, Comic Relief reduced their IT infrastructure spend by 93%. Now, our next customer is the Ministry of Justice. MOJ has defined a vision for stating that all systems operating on UK official and below data classification will be migrated to the cloud by 2020. Here to tell us about their journey is Chief Digital Information Officer Tom Reed. Please welcome him.
Good morning. Any government digital people in the crowd? No, just me. Okay, so I'm Tom. I'm from the Ministry of Justice. I want to do this in two parts. I'm going to talk a little bit about our mission and then a little bit about the actual tech that we've been deploying in partnership with AWS. There seems to be a bit of a theme of history today, so just in the spirit of competition, the Ministry of Justice can trace back some of its court services to 1178, when Henry II set up the Commoners' Court, so I think we win. Just a quick overview of what we do. So we run 500 courts and tribunals across England and Wales. We have around 70,000 employees operating across around 800 to 900 buildings. We also look after 83,000 people who are in our prison service, and that's around 121 prisons. So we have quite considerable scale. And we also support millions of citizens who access our online services every day. I always want at these sort of events to ask people to put their hands up to say who's interacted with our services, not gone to prison, but who's interacted with our services. But the truth is, most people interact with the justice system when something's gone really badly wrong in their lives. So you might be a victim of crime, and you want to get justice. Or perhaps conversely, you've been accused of a crime, and you're going to have your freedom taken away by the state. It's a really, really important moment in your life. Or away from the criminal world, perhaps you're getting divorced, and you want the courts to decide who looks after the children and where they live. These are the most fundamental parts of somebody's life, and these are our users. So it's quite a unique sort of place to work. I want to talk mostly today about one of our smaller agencies, the Legal Aid Agency, but it's one of our most important ones. If you don't know it, the Legal Aid Agency is effectively there to make sure that justice is available for everyone in society, not just those who can afford it. And effectively, they run systems for around 30,000 providers, so legal firms, and have around 1,300 internal staff, and they make decisions about who should get legal aid and who shouldn't, which sounds terribly bureaucratic. So perhaps if I just make it a bit more real, I always like to tie it back to a woman who lives in East London called Lucy. East London, one of these areas that's quite run down, but now is becoming fairly gentrified and hipster and cafes and so forth. Now, Lucy lives with her 3 children. She's in her mid-20s, and she's lived in the same flat for 10 years since her parents kicked her out because she got pregnant. The boyfriend is long gone, and she's living there with her children. She tries to work, but it's quite hard juggling looking after children and working. And at the end of last year, her landlord decided to get more money and decided to evict her. So Lucy, who has no money, no savings, she has loans and plenty of debts, she had 3 weeks and she had to get out of her house. And the most likely outcome in that situation is that she would be homeless and her children would be taken into care. Now, somebody in that situation, they probably don't know about legal aid and the Legal Aid Agency or the Ministry of Justice. All they know is that they need help. So I think, just think for a minute how you would feel if you were in that situation. And these are our users. So we don't innovate for competitive advantage or to stop the challengers from overtaking us. We're a monopoly service. People have to use our services. So that's the mission and sort of why we do what we do. despite the importance of legal aid services, a few years ago, we were in a bit of a bad state from a technology perspective. So we had an old on-premise data center with fairly aged tin. We have a mixed Oracle estate, so full-stack Oracle applications, but a mixed estate. And we had frequent service outages. And crucially, for people like Lucy, we also could only, as the people before me from Sainsburys were saying, we could only deploy a few times a year. So some services monthly, some sort of quarterly. And that meant it was very difficult to make services more easily accessible as more people assume they can access services through their mobile phone rather than going to a physical building. So that was a real problem. We had to do something about it. And we had really strong backing from the top of the shop to improve. So what we did, we're lucky in UK government. We have a thing called the Government Digital Service, and they wrote a thing called the Technology Code of Practice, which is well worth reading, even if you're not in the public sector. And point 5 of this, which is effectively a guide of how to do technology properly, is a fairly straightforward thing saying use cloud first. Now, lots of CIOs in government thought, perfect, we're already doing cloud. We have data centers with clouds in, and they sort of doubled down on that sort of on-prem version of cloud. And they clarified that really this means authentic cloud. They mean the public cloud, and they don't mean hybrid. They don't mean on-premise or private deployment model. So we're not doing that. So what we wanted to do is move all of these legal aid services to the public cloud, and we chose AWS. I say all of them. The first decision we made, which was a horrible decision, was to move a couple of really, really risky systems that were quite fragile to like an IaaS, a colo thing, rather than a public cloud, because we thought that was less likely to cause problems. It did not work. So what we did is we moved the next 10, which were pretty major, as I say, sort of these also Spark-based Oracle stack systems, and we moved them to AWS, and we did one system per weekend at the end of last summer. Lots and lots of work, but we moved them over. We chose a really quite vanilla architecture in AWS. 9 out of the 10 we containerized and moved through, and we're using RDS for the Oracle databases. One of them we couldn't containerize because of Oracle support rules. We'll get to that one later. We've implemented a little bit of DynamoDB and Lambda, but more for administrative functions at the moment. We're going to look at that more in the future. So where has this left us? Major savings on hosting. It's been really, really good in terms of our fragile public sector budgets. We have automated patching and monitoring, which makes things much more stable, much more secure. There are baddies out there who like to attack our systems fairly regularly, so that's very important for us. And we have much, much better reliability. These people who access our services, as I say, they are at this sensitive moment in their lives. We can't just have days of delays while our caseworkers can't process their applications. And that's really why we're here. Next steps, we want to go a bit further than this. So we want to move to, this is a bit busy, but we want to move to a Kubernetes stack, which is kind of more of a cloud-native platform. We want to give our developers tools that they're used to using, things like GitHub and Circle CI and things like that they're used to using, and then we can swap those out as we go. We will be looking at other services as we go forward. We want to move this into a cloud-native service so that the developers can focus on fixing those applications, many of which are monoliths, and we want to break them down into microservices so we can iterate more quickly. Okay, that's it from me. That's hopefully a snapshot of what we're doing over at the Ministry of Justice. We're hiring, so do get in touch if you want a mission. And that's me done. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Tom. Now, we've been talked how important it is for you to have the right tool, but it's also important for you to be free of abusive relationships with your tool providers. Now, particularly, when you look at databases, you look at Oracle and Microsoft. They are expensive, they have high lock-in, they're proprietary, and forget about the fact that both of them are constantly going to be auditing you, looking to find some license violation that they can fine you for. They also make erratic decisions overnight, and frankly, those decisions are not in your best interests, they're in their best interests. People are sick of it and can't comfortably build a business when your database providers are constantly prioritizing their own needs over your own. This is why so many customers have been moving to open source databases, including MySQL, Postgres, and MariaDB. Now, many of these customers want open source databases with customer-friendly policies and portability, but they still want the performance of commercial-grade old guard databases. And that's why we built Amazon Aurora. Aurora is a MySQL and Postgres-compatible relational database that's built for the cloud. It combines the performance and availability of high-end commercial databases with the simplicity and cost-effectiveness of open-source databases. Now, because it's built on MySQL and Postgres, many of the import and export tools, snapshots, and any of the things that you've used with your traditional databases will work. It means that code, applications, drivers, tools that you're already using will seamlessly move over, but you'll get the improved performance. Aurora is several times faster than MySQL and Postgres, so you can easily scale your database deployments up and down. It offers 4 nines of availability, has fault-tolerant, self-healing storage, and it's really built for the cloud, so it automatically backs up your data to S3. It allows you to easily recover from physical failures, and you can backtrack within seconds to a previous point in time to recover from any application errors. All of this at 1/10 the cost of traditional legacy databases. This is part of the reason why Aurora is the fastest growing service in the history of AWS. And we've already launched 35 significant additional features in the last year alone. That's part of why we're seeing people move to Aurora in droves. One example is Photobox. Photobox operates in 15 markets and brings over 20 million customers moments to life with their photos. The company migrated its core e-commerce platform, photo database, from ClusterixDB to Amazon Aurora. It resulted in a 30% performance improvement and savings of more than £450,000 per year. Separately, they also moved all of their data storage to S3, moving 5.7 billion photos, or 9 petabytes of data, into S3, saving their business £4.5 million per year. Dow Jones shortened their nightly load times of market data, which used to take 8 hours, down to 3 hours when it migrated its market data system from SQL Server over to Aurora. While relational databases are continued to be important for many of your applications, the move to microservices is actually driving the need for purpose-built relational and non-relational databases. And no one has more purpose-built databases than AWS. There are apps that need to store and retrieve key value data in high volumes and in millisecond latencies, and for that we have Amazon DynamoDB. Other applications need even faster response times with sub-millisecond, and for that we have Amazon Elastic Cache, a managed in-memory data store leveraging Redis and Memcached. Some applications need semi-structured data, things storing like documents or content management, personalization for mobile applications, and for that we have Amazon DocumentDB. And then there are applications that have millions of different relationships that you need to match, and the relationships between all of those. For those, we have a managed graph database with Amazon Neptune. Other applications need to efficiently collect and synthesize insights from enormous amounts of data that change over time. Think about IoT applications. And for that, we have Amazon TimeStream. And finally, some applications need a centralized, trusted authority, maintaining a scalable and cryptographically verifiable record of transactions. And for those applications, we have Amazon QLDB. Now, I'm not going to have time to go into detail to every one of these database services, but there are tons of great technical sessions out there for today, and any of those that you think are a right fit for your application, I encourage you to go to a deep dive session that we have later this afternoon. Let's look at a couple of those, though. DynamoDB is a key value document database. It supports the world's largest scale applications by providing consistent single-digit millisecond response times at any scale. It's fully managed, it's multi-region, multi-master, and it has built-in security, built-in backup restore, and in-memory caching. Dynamo automatically scales up to the needs of your application, so you don't need to worry about that. Over the last 18 months, we've delivered many of the most asked-for capabilities in Dynamo. One such example is global tables. With global tables, we can replicate your data across multiple AWS regions, giving you fast local access to your data for all of your distributed global applications. Today, Dynamo scales to support some of the world's largest applications. Amazon.com's internal workflow and workflow engine is known as Herd, and that powers the business logic for processing many of the Amazon.com orders worldwide. The the Amazon Herd team moved their system from Oracle to Amazon DynamoDB and lowered the workflow execution overhead by 90% and reduced cost by 90% by getting rid of all of their Oracle hosts. Epic Games, the maker of the popular game Fortnite, uses DynamoDB to run real-time and batch analytics on more than 125 million events every minute. Now, earlier, I mentioned the Amazon QLDB ledger database, and it's worth taking a stop here to talk a little bit about this. Now, blockchain is a topic that many people wonder about, are interested in, and kind of want to know, how do I think about that? Well, we actually spent a good chunk of time last year really getting in deep with customers and understanding what is it that you want to use blockchain for, and what are you hoping to solve with this new technology? We came out with customers really looking at two main use cases. The first thing is a significant number of customers, effectively, they wanted a ledger. They wanted it owned by a single trusted entity, but they wanted a ledger that serves as a transparent, immutable, and cryptographically verifiable transaction log. That's what they needed. Then there was a second set of customers that really wanted to execute contracts. They wanted to share data with one another without a trusted central authority. For that first group of people, we built Amazon QLDB, or Quantum Ledger Database. A couple of benefits of QLDB. Number one, it's immutable. QLDB uses an append-only immutable journal to maintain a sequence and permanent record of every data change. That can't be deleted, it can't be modified. Second, it's cryptographically verifiable. We give you APIs to go look at that data and understand through cryptographic techniques that none of the data has been modified. And finally, it's transparent. As customers, you have full visibility into the entire data lineage, so you can look back and easily track and analyze any changes to your data history. For that second group that needs to transact with a decentralized trust, it turns out that that is a great use of blockchain frameworks. And so we built Amazon Managed Blockchain. Managed Blockchain is a fully managed blockchain service supporting both Hyperledger Fabric, which is available today, and the Ethereum framework, which is coming soon. Instead of you having to manually provision hardware, update software configurations, set new settings, add new members, etc., with just a few clicks, you can set up and start using the open source blockchain framework of your choice. Now, when you look at the breadth and depth of purpose-built databases offered by AWS, there has never been a better time to be a developer. This really is a moment for database freedom. Now, as we talked earlier, customers are migrating more and more of their data to AWS. And there's so much more that you can do with your data than many customers have historically done when it's in the cloud. Customers want to be able to run analytics on that vast swath of data, and they want to be able to do machine learning on all of that data. So, with AWS's broad and deep portfolio of analytics services, and you want to get more out of your data, customers are really starting to see the value of bringing all of that data together in one place. Today, it's stored in different silos, and oftentimes customers want to pull it on one data lake. Today, customers are running more than 10,000 data lakes on AWS, and S3 is the #1 choice for data lakes. There's a couple of reasons why. As we mentioned earlier, S3 is by far the most durable, highly available, and scalable data system in the world. S3 replicates your data across multiple data centers within a single region, and it has security, compliance, and audit capabilities that you need to ensure that your data is safe. S3 also gives you business insights into that data. For example, we have a service called Storage Class Analysis that analyzes your data. It looks at all of your request patterns and then recommends when it thinks that you can move some of your data to a colder tier in order to save money. Now, once your data is there, you can leverage a broad swath of analytics to deeply analyze that data. However, when we talked to customers, they said, you know what? It's great once all of my data is set up, it's indexed correctly, and it's in a data lake. But setting that up is really hard. That's why we launched Lake Formation. Lake Formation helps you build, secure, and manage a data lake in AWS. First, you simply identify existing data stores, whether they're in S3, SQL databases, NoSQL databases, and then Lake Formation will index that data and build it into a data lake for you. We'll crawl, catalog, and prepare that data for analytics. Then it makes it easy for you to give users access, self-service access to that data so that they can use their choice of analytics in order to process and look for insights. Now for this, AWS provides, again, the broadest and deepest portfolio of database and analytics services so that you can really gain insights from that data. Because it's not really about having data, it's about getting insights from that data. Each of these services is purpose-built for the direct use case that you need, including things like big data processing, interactive analytics, data warehousing, etc. Let's look at a couple of them. The first is Amazon Redshift. Redshift is a fast, scalable data warehouse. It makes it simple and cost-effective to analyze all of your data. Redshift delivers 10 times faster processing than a traditional data warehouse. By using machine learning, it uses massively parallel query execution and columnar storage on high-performance disks. You can set up a brand new data warehouse in just minutes and then run queries across petabytes of data that are in your data lake. If you want to do real-time processing of streaming data, you can also use Amazon Kinesis, which has become a key aspect of IoT applications. Kinesis makes it easy to collect, process, and analyze stream data, and we have a wide range and a family of Kinesis services that are purpose-built for each individual application that fits your use case. Today, much of the new data that's being created is actually being created at the edge, with billions of edge devices being deployed, and more every year. With those billions of devices located in homes, factories, oil wells, agricultural fields, hospitals, thousands of other places, device data is increasingly becoming critical to allow customers to build more and achieve more precise insights through machine learning. These insights help customers really optimize their products and processes and improve the quality of life and that benefits society as a whole. One example is healthcare providers are using patient care devices that remotely monitor patient health. Manufacturers are improving processes and reducing costs by analyzing information from service equipment and creating predictive maintenance models that keep devices up to date with over-the-air updates. But it turns out that analyzing all of that data can be really difficult. Because of those challenges, you need a comprehensive portfolio of software and services that make it really easy and secure to connect your devices to operate at the edge and pull all that data back into a central repository. AWS IoT provides that broad and deep functionality, spanning from the very edge of the cloud so that you can collect, store, and analyze that device data and then bring it back to a central place. AWS IoT is used by millions of customers across 190 countries. It can easily scale as your device fleet scales and your business requirements evolve. Most importantly, AWS IoT offers a comprehensive security features so you can create preventative plans and policies and respond immediately when any potential issues arise. Through integration with edge services and Lambda, AWS IoT also makes it easy to deal with your devices when you experience intermittent connectivity. Now, customers of all sizes across all industries are building IoT solutions using AWS IoT. ThingCo is an insurtech startup specializing in connected car services. They use telematics, video, and voice. The company's AI-enabled product, Theo, enables drivers to track their driving data and develops real-time things like warning hazards, accident response, good driver discounts, including cheaper car insurance. Theo runs all of these services on AWS IoT. Vizio is a device manufacturer that selected AWS IoT to deliver Alexa-enabled capabilities to its smart TVs and soundbars. This is pretty cool. Using AWS IoT, Vizio was able to deliver a working prototype integrating Alexa within a few days, and then was able to roll out Alexa Voice to all of its existing 1.2 million devices already out in the field. Because that system is built on AWS, Vizio is able to scale seamlessly and handle that new capability and launch it faster than they ever imagined that they could. Now today, there's so much buzz about machine learning. For tens of thousands of customers, such as Liberty Mutual, Slack, C-SPAN, Intuit, Capital One, the American Heart Association, FINRA, AWS is how those customers do machine learning. However, and many of you must think this, I don't think progress is happening fast enough. It's not happening at the pace that many customers want. Most customers want it to move even faster. And so we're here to keep providing capabilities that make it easier for builders to use machine learning in their applications. We're able to pull from a long history of machine learning at Amazon, whether it's personal recommendation engines of what you think you might want to buy next, for our fulfillment automation and inventory management in our warehouses, to our voice-driven applications with Alexa, or even our new Amazon Go stores. We've been doing machine learning across Amazon for more than 20 years, back to our first recommendation engine. But if we really want ML to become pervasive across the broader industry, we need to make machine learning much more approachable. We need to make it so that everyday developers and data scientists can build intelligence into their applications, just as a normal part of what they do every day. HSBC is one of the largest banking and financial services organizations in the world. They built a chatbot to help the company's regulatory compliance function better serve internal stakeholders. Using Amazon Translate, Amazon Lex, and Amazon Comprehend, HSBC converted bank policy documents into a conversational bot that reduced the time it takes to answer a regulatory question from hours or days into mere seconds. You can actually go learn more about this particular use case here, as HSBC has a project at 3 p.m. in Theater 1 where they talk about how they did this. Marinus Analytics uses Amazon Recognition to find human trafficking victims and reunite them with their families. Marinus uses Amazon Recognition to scan photos of victims and compare them with photos online. This critical task is incredibly time-sensitive and can now be done in seconds rather than days with more accuracy than ever before. Faculty, formerly ASI Data Science, is a London-based artificial intelligence solution provider. Relying on the faculty program, data scientists can write code that enables them to quickly containerize machine learning models and access really large data sets. Here to tell us more about how AWS is helping faculty meet the business needs of more than 2,000 data scientists across the globe, please join me in welcoming co-founder Dr. Angie Ma.
You can draw a lot of parallels between the evolution of technology adoption and the different stages of human life. Infancy, adolescence, and adulthood. Take internet as an example. It was first conceived in the 70s, and during its infancy, it was a period of excitement and big hopes. All the standard protocols that we know of it came into being. Soon after, the Queen sent her first email in the 80s. Amazon came into existence in the 90s, together with many who are now household names. Then came the adolescence. Well, the internet went through its teenagers phase with rebellious and erratic behaviors. But like all teenagers, they grow to become responsible and reliable adults. And in the case of internet, we see a lot of growing ups happening in the past few years. And that's an important transition from adolescence to adulthood, because it's about doing things responsibly and ethically. Like the internet, artificial intelligence is a general purpose technology. And it's going to follow a very similar path and have a very huge impact on society. And I'm really excited about all the new things people here and watching this talk will be building using AI. However, what does adulthood looks like for AI? And that is something we have been spending a lot of time thinking about. So good morning, everyone. I am Angie, co-founder of Faculty. We believe that artificial intelligence is the most important technology of our time, and we exist to make it real. And what does that mean? It means enhancing products, improving services, and saving lives. We've delivered more than 300 projects covering pretty much almost every industry sector and in many different geographies across the world. And making AI real for us means that it's taken out of the lab and making sure that it's applied at scale and put into production within the business. And we've done that, delivered that for many different organizations. And some of it you might have already heard of. For example, our work with the Home Office to help fight terrorism by stopping propaganda videos to upload it online. Or our work with the London Fire Brigade to help understand fire risk better, to help making buildings and homes safer. So making AI real is extremely important for us, but we see that as not enough. It has to be safe as well. Famous Professor Stuart Russell has a good analogy. He says that if we build a bridge, we don't just build a bridge first and then think about whether it's safe or not afterwards. Building the bridge and making sure that it's safe goes hand in hand. And we're working towards incorporating AI safety right from the onset. So what does AI, safe AI and responsible AI look like? So when we build AI, there are three very important considerations. AI algorithms need to be fair, so they do the right thing. AI algorithms, they need to be robust, so they work reliably in the real world. AI algorithms need to be explainable so that humans can understand and check from what the result is, and so that it's not a black box. So today, I'll talk a little bit about explainability using the example of a car insurer. Increasingly, car insurers use algorithms to help determine, for example, to accept or reject a claim, or how much insurance premium someone would pay. It would be great if your premium went down, but the premium would go up. And if you're one of those customers whose premium goes up, you would want to know why. And being able to give reasons to that outcome provides transparency. And many organizations, especially those in regulated industries, they want to give more transparency when they are using algorithms, AI algorithms, in their business. Now here, I want to show you explainability in action on our platform. Our platform, faculty platform, is a workbench for AI practitioners. And we have AI toolkit that works on any machine learning algorithms. And we now know that the human brains are systematically biased. And for the first time in history, we have algorithms that can spot patterns as effectively as human brains, but that can be carefully corrected and remove biases. You could say that our tooling is a bit like the debug mode for AI. As far as I know, this is the only tooling in the world that provides AI safety out the box. And our platform is built on AWS. We pretty much use all of the components of AWS. And there are many reasons we have chosen to use AWS. One important one is security. For a business like us who handles a lot of client data, it's paramount. Security is the single most important thing for us. And AWS Security Services is the best in class. And that gives us and our customer confidence that the data is secure. And for a fast-growing business, the amount of data we process continue to increase. So far, we have processed 250 terabytes of data on our platform. And that's not exactly the scale of snowmobile yet. However, it's basically more than all the Hollywood movies ever made. And that's the data that we store on AWS S3. And being able to easily and quickly scale our infrastructure is really critical, and AWS allows us to do that. Now, going back to AI safety, it's AWS flexibility and scalability is also incredibly important. Take explainability algorithm. To run a simple explainability algorithm, it requires 96 CPUs to do the computation. And being able to spin up as many cores as we need using AWS EC2 containers, we are able to run these AI safety algorithms. It also means that for our customers, deploying AI safety is more cost-effectively. And finally, by acting now and deploying AI safely today, we can enjoy the benefits, the excitement, and all the innovation that AI could bring. At the same time, we can also be acting like adults to be responsible and reliable, just like an adult. And thank you very much for listening. And I look forward to speaking to many of you who are interested to come and chat and enjoy the rest of this amazing summit. Thank you.
Great, super interesting things that they're doing. Now, a little bit about how we think about machine learning in AWS. At a macro level, we think about machine learning as having 3 layers to a stack. Now, the bottom layer is made up of frameworks, interfaces, and infrastructure. Then we have a middle layer. That middle layer is mostly made up of machine learning services. And then you have a top layer where you have AI services. Services kind of closely mimic human cognition. Let's start at that bottom layer first. Now, if we look at infrastructure, it turns out that most deep learning is done in the cloud, is being done on AWS using P3 instances. Our P3DN instances provide 100 gigabits of networking in between instances. This enables developers to continually scale their training performance across more and more instances over time, accelerating their processing, removing data transfer bottlenecks, and rapidly improving the quality of different training models. The largest instance type, the P3DN 24 extra large, is the biggest one anywhere. It has the most onboard GPU memory, it has the most networking capability, and it has the biggest GPU. It has, in fact, 3x more network throughput than the next fastest provider. This all leads to faster ability to more quickly iterate on your training models. Now, let's go look at some of the frameworks that people use for common ML problems. Now, we support a broad group of frameworks. More than half of our customers actually use 2 or more frameworks when they're building their various ML applications. Lots of people use MXNet for speech models and recommendation systems. They use PyTorch, particularly good for researching new methods. And they use TensorFlow for computer vision and image recognition, many of our language models as well. But if there's one thing we know, it's that change is constant, and we expect that there will be new frameworks over time, and we'll support those as well. However, the one today with the most resonance in the community is TensorFlow. So let's take a little bit of a closer look at TensorFlow. It turns out that 85% of all TensorFlow workloads running in the cloud run on AWS. For example, Siemens runs their natural language processing model that expedites their due diligence on energy projects on AWS on TensorFlow. Snap, the makers of Snapchat, build TensorFlow models on AWS to better match ads to users and maximize revenue and engagement. Now, customers that use TensorFlow love the availability of reference code and the rich ecosystem of customers, but they often find that once they start scaling out, they can start running into scaling problems. Now, that's because customers usually need to scale their training across many GPUs, and it turns out that for TensorFlow, scaling across GPUs is difficult. In fact, it's incredibly inefficient. Customers were seeing only about a 65% efficiency as they scaled, often up to 256 GPUs. Our team dove deep and figured out what was going on there, and we found out that when we really looked at TensorFlow, the way that the model was sharing parameters across a number of instances was leading to the inefficiency. We dove in, optimized the model, and added those back to the open source community in order to optimize this and overcome those efficiencies. Now improving models so that TensorFlow can scale it up to 90% efficiency when you're using one of these really big models. That allows developers and customers to train their models much faster for the same costs, to reduce cost and speed their development. That's great for training, but many customers say, what about inference? Running inference in production actually drives the majority of costs for machine learning workloads. And if you actually step back and think about it, this makes a lot of sense. You train a model, maybe once, twice a week, but you could be running your inference models consistently, maybe thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even millions of times during that same period. Take Alexa as a really great example. At Amazon, we'll retrain our language models several times a week in order to make improvements. But every request to Alexa from every single customer contributes to inference costs. And given all the Alexa devices out there, that can really scale. So inference costs really matter to developers. To help reduce the cost of inference, we've come up with a number of innovations to help customers. The first is elastic inference. Elastic inference allows you to use a smaller instance, maybe an M5 instance or a general purpose instance, and attach just a little bit of GPU for then you just need a little bit of inference processing to speed up your applications at the edge. Many customers, because were able to shrink the number of GPUs that they were using, were able to reduce the cost of their inference workloads by 75% using elastic inference. The second thing that we've announced is AWS Inferentia. Inferentia is a custom high-performance machine learning inference chip, custom developed by AWS. Inferentia is focused on significantly reducing the cost of running inference workloads. It'll be available this year and offer hundreds of teraflops of inference capabilities. We expect that AWS Inferentia will allow you to reduce inference workloads up to 10x, even over what you can get with elastic inference. And finally, I want to talk about Amazon EC2 G4 instances. G4 instances were announced just a few weeks ago and will be available publicly in about 2 weeks. These instances are designed for machine learning, training, inference, and video transcoding. They're built on the NVIDIA T4 processor and together with AWS custom Intel CPUs, and they have local NVMe storage and 100 gigabits of networking. We expect the G4 instances will be great for actually small training workloads as well as broad inference workloads, and we're really excited about what customers will use them for. Now, we're seeing a ton of activity at this bottom layer that I talked about of the machine learning stack. But in reality, unfortunately, there just aren't that many machine learning experts out there in the world today. Now, we're training more of them in universities every day, but that is just not happening fast enough, and today there just aren't enough. So, if we want to enable more enterprises and companies to be able to use machine learning in their applications in an expansive way, we have to solve the problem of how we make it accessible to everyday developers and data scientists. That's why we built and launched Amazon SageMaker. It's a managed ML service in that middle tier. It makes it much easier for everyday developers and data scientists to get up and running with machine learning. Now, there's many components that make up Amazon SageMaker. As an example, there's SageMaker Ground Truth. Ground Truth makes it easy to build highly accurate training data sets. It reduces the cost of labeling your training data by up to 70%. SageMaker also makes it much easier to implement your desired algorithm and framework. As I mentioned earlier, our teams have optimized many of the top frameworks and algorithms and SageMaker makes it trivially easy to launch them directly from the interface. Now let's say you're looking for a different algorithm for your particular machine learning application. We have AWS Marketplace with over 150 machine learning different algorithms and models that can be deployed directly from AWS SageMaker. And let's say you need to teach a machine learning model, but you actually don't have any training data to start with. SageMaker Reinforcement Learning, or SageMaker RL, offers built-in, fully managed reinforcement learning algorithms that include some of the newest and most promising algorithms out there in research today. So it's much easier to do training in SageMaker than anywhere else. All you have to do, you specify the location of where your data is, you pick the instance type you want to use, and then SageMaker will spin up your cluster, do your training, and then spin down the cluster. You don't even have to worry about infrastructure management or cluster management. Once you've trained that model, you can easily optimize a number of different ways. We have automatic tuning parameters called hyperparameter optimization, which actually uses machine learning to train your machine learning models and automatically tune those models to be more efficient. And then with SageMaker Neo, you can optimize that deployment so that you can ensure that your inference algorithms are the most optimal for when you deploy them into production. Once you're finally ready to go to production, you simply pick your instance type, and you can one-click your deploy models directly from SageMaker out into production. Once it's out in production, SageMaker manages all of that infrastructure for you on your behalf. Today, we have more than 10,000 customers using Amazon SageMaker, and many of these customers are standardizing on AWS for all of their machine learning. British Airways, as an example, carries over 46 million passengers every year, and they use SageMaker to anticipate new patterns and suggest when aircraft may need additional minor maintenance ahead of when something goes wrong. Intuit is all in on AWS. They use Amazon SageMaker to train all of their machine learning models quickly and at scale. They've cut the time that they've needed to deploy their models by over 90%. And they use ML-generated insights for real-time fraud detection and prevention. Now, so far, we've discussed that bottom layer, we've talked about that middle layer, and that brings us to that top layer. At the top of the stack, this is really serving developers and companies who want to add intelligence to their applications just through an API call, not through building their own models, not through training their own models. Customers at this level can easily build capabilities into their new or existing applications, and they can reduce costs, they can reduce development time, and increase their speed. We offer a broad array of services across vision, speech, language, and we improve and the ability to add customer satisfaction insights to your application. Let's take a quick look at a couple of these. For vision, we have recognition image and recognition video. For things like, tell me what's in this image, or which celebrities are in this image, or is this image safe for work? You can get that simply from an API call. For documents, we have a service that we call Textract that makes it easy to extract text and data from virtually any document. Now you may think, well, hasn't OCR been around a long time? Well, it turns out, I'm not sure if any of you have tried to OCR a document before, but it's not particularly useful if your data is in tables like this one, or it has graphs or forms. Textract uses machine learning to understand natively what's there in columns and documents, and actually makes it easy then to use that into a database and use it, for instance, with Amazon Aurora. For speech, we have Polly. Polly will use a text string and translate it into speech. And we also have Transcribe, where you can take an audio file and translate that into text. For languages, we have Translate, which translates language between 25 different languages. We also have Amazon Comprehend, that understands what's being said inside of a translational text. And we have specialized versions of that, like Comprehend Medical, that really understands medical terms and understands things like dosing and prescriptions that can be used for medical companies to really understand what's happening in unstructured text. We also have Lex, a service that uses automatic speech recognition and natural language voice understanding for building conversational interfaces into any application using voice and text. We have Forecast. Forecast is an accurate time series forecasting service, and then we have Personalize, our real-time personalization recommendation service. Both Forecast and Personalize came from Amazon's experience of using these services. There's no service to provision, they're fully managed, and no machine learning models to build. You simply point at your data and get forecasts and personalizations. Now, in addition to all of these services, we have some great resources to help you get started. We've got the Amazon ML Solutions Lab. That'll help you accelerate your use of machine learning in your products and understand how you can integrate it into your processes. It pairs your team with Amazon machine learning experts that help you figure out how to prepare your data, build and train your models, and really put those things into production. We also have the Amazon Machine Learning University, which expands on our training that we use for actually our own internal developers. This provides learning paths for your key stakeholders of your business and allows you to get specialty certifications so that you can accelerate your machine learning journey. We also have more hands-on tools. We have Deep Lens. Deep Lens is the world's first machine learning-enabled video camera. It allows developers of all sizes and skill levels to get started learning how deep learning and machine learning works. Deep Lens is commonly used for things like object detection and sentiment analysis projects. Models trained in SageMaker can easily be sent to Deep Lens with just a few clicks in the AWS Management Console. You can run any deep learning framework, including TensorFlow, MXNet, or Caffe, and then upload your models into Deep Lens. With over 100 gigaflops of compute power, this device can process deep learning predictions of HD video in real time. I also want to talk to you about a new, fun way to learn about machine learning. Deep Racer. It's a 1/18th scale race car driven by reinforcement learning and gives you an exciting and fun way to get started with machine learning. Now, reinforcement learning is an advanced machine learning technique that takes a very different approach to training models than many of the researchers have traditionally used. The kind of superpower of reinforcement learning is that it learns through reward as opposed to past data. Through very complex behaviors that don't require any labeled training data, it can make short-term decisions that drive it toward its longer-term goal. In this case, getting around a racetrack and maybe staying on the track. And what's a race car and a track without a little competition? Let's see the video.
Hello everyone, I'm Ryan Marine. These are 1/18th scale RC cars that are fully autonomous thanks to reinforcement learning.
Fun. All right. Here's how it works. You can build a reinforcement learning model either at a workshop here at the summit or at home on the RoboMaker simulator. Then bring your model to the tracks, and we're going to start racing today here at the summit at the AWS Deep Racer London Speedway in the Expo Hall. If you don't have a model, don't worry. We have a couple of sample ones that you can try out at the racetrack. You can do this at any of the Deep Racer summits throughout 2019, and if you go to multiple summits, you're welcome to participate as many times as you like. Then, the winner of each Deep Racing League race and the top 10 point scorers throughout the year will win an all-expenses-paid trip to the Deep Racer League Championship Cup, which is going to be held at reInvent 2019. We'll also have virtual events and tournaments throughout the year where we'll take the winners and top 10 scorers at reInvent as well. This is available through the console right now, and I encourage you guys to check out the races today in the Expo Hall and try your hand. You can learn more also at ai.aws. Now today, you're all going to have the opportunity to attend sessions on many of the services we discussed today, as well as some that we didn't have time to get to. But the one thing that I want you to take away is whether you're a new startup or a 100-year-old enterprise or a highly regulated industry, you can build on AWS. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the summit.
The keynote has now finished. Check